Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Sandiego here, along with Daniel Zeri from Racers, the Girls Behind the Helmet. A big hello and thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You can invest in the Grid Network by visiting our Patreon page or buy me coffee for a one-time contribution. Link in the video description. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're on the air. We'd love to hear your questions right here. And of course, any subscriptions, definitely make sure to hit the bell, get all the notifications when we go on the air. Now, Daniel, we'll definitely get into some of the racing from this past weekend, including 3 victories this past weekend. One of the big stories that came out this weekend was here in the United States involving NASCAR Camping World Truck Series driver Hailie Deegan. Of course, this race weekend, she was at Texas Motor Speedway, had a great qualifying effort, was starting in the top 10, but things did not end her way at the end of the race. When towards the closing stages, her and Todd Bodine made contact. Coming out of turn 2, Todd Bodine moved up the track, potentially for the momentum from that inside lane, where in turn 1 and 2 in Texas Motor Speedway has a lot less banking compared to 3 and 4, which has more of the traditional banking you see in a 1.5-mile oval. Todd Bodine got into Hayley Deegan. Hayley Deegan got into the outside wall. As she said on the radio, it killed the truck. One of the big things, Hayley Deegan, this year has not been going great for her. 17th place finish, one of her best finishes. She's 26th in the point standings behind several drivers, including a teammate that are running part-time. So this is not the kind of season Hayley Deegan was anticipating, being her second season in the truck series. Now, it was just a few days before the race. She was on a website where she had an interview. And in that interview, she talked about how she sometimes feels she's raced a little bit more differently than the other competitors. At the end, she said she didn't feel like this was something to get all upset about. Just go out there, do her thing. But Daniel, this seems to be something where we know when it comes to female athletes, or just even females in the workplace as well, they get treated a little bit differently because they are a female. And a lot of times people don't seem to really are aware that this is occurring, whereas the workplace or athletes being treated differently because they're female. We know sometimes one of the easy ways you see this occurring is when a female athlete during an interview, they're asked questions not relevant to the sport. I know a few years ago there was one report that got in trouble because was asking all the female athletes, "Oh, what kind of clothes are you wearing? What style clothes? Who's the designer?" But the male athletes were not getting those same questions. They were getting different kind of questions. Daniel, is there a problem with when it comes to women in motorsports not getting equal opportunities to sponsors and some of the top rides? Do you believe? And is there something to Hayley's story that you feel like it's not only occurring in NASCAR, but in some other series as well?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me. Well, I think this is one of the most, the biggest questions really regarding females in motorsport. It's hard to say how much of a how much of a difference it makes getting the same opportunities or getting the same sponsorship, because of course nowadays getting sponsor money for racing in some of these high level series is extremely difficult, both for men and for women, to be honest. But that said, I think that women do get a little bit more, have a little bit more of a hard time to finding the sponsors, mainly because of a misalignment in some of the companies that are sponsoring motor racing traditionally to some of the targets, their target audience. I think this is shifting a little bit. We had a chat, I think, a couple of years ago with Alice Powell about this, and she said that, if I'm not mistaken, she said that she was having a little bit more of a hard time to finding sponsors that maybe were interested in sponsoring especially a female athletes, because of course motor racing traditionally had a more male audience in the media. So this is also an important topic to maybe trying to increase the female interest in viewership, not only participation in motorsport, but also in the viewership. Because if that changes, if the demographics is going to be a little bit more balanced, I think that also helps the companies that are willing to potentially invest in motor racing and sponsor both a man or a woman that wouldn't make sense at that, that wouldn't make a difference at that point. So I think this is an important point. But of course, that said, it's incredibly difficult to get sponsors both for men and for women. One of the of the big topics then is women that are getting into the championship, but then are struggling to get into a competitive equipment, getting into the top teams and being treated equals like some of their teammates, for example. We had, unfortunately, some example of these in some of the championships, both in the US and in Europe, I think. And of course, this is also something that has to, as a community, as a sports community, we have to work towards, and I think this is going to change with results, because when we keep reporting from female drivers having great results, I think that can shift also a little bit the perception of everyone, of all the stakeholders. And so show that actually they can be competitive on the same kind of equipment, and projects like, for example, Iron Dames are doing great for this, because they are putting some very competitive female drivers in really competitive equipment, and they are showing race after race that they can be in the top 3 fighting for podiums. And so I think these are really important projects, for example. But yeah, I think this is a huge topic that we can go on talking like for ages, and there will be always example to take and to study and to improve from there. Also, speaking about Deegan, for example, it's not been the first time that she's been put into the wall this year, but also in the previous seasons. Of course, she's learning, but still, most of her races have been ruined most of the times, but not her fault. And this is also something that we've discussed with some other drivers, also here in Europe. It seems that they do struggle a little bit more to get the respect from the other drivers, and this is especially true from drivers of an older generation, while the newest generation are a little bit better in this. But still, for example, we talked about this, I think it was Amna Al-Kubaisi, that she said that at the beginning of her career, she struggled a little bit more to find, to have to gain the same amount of respect from her competitors, because this is unfortunately something that is still happening. Or also Michel Gattin, I think, also told us something similar, that She is, that you have to prove a little bit more your worth on track to gain the same respect from the other drivers, and not being crashed out so often, or when you have a contact. Maybe in single seaters it's not that common, because of course a contact is much more risky, because of course both of the drivers are likely to go out of the race, rather than in stock cars, for example, when it's much more common to use bumping or stuff like that. But yeah, I think these are really huge topics that it's definitely worth to investigate further.
And here is that article that I did mention. It was from Sportscast, and Hailie Deegan can't admit other drivers take advantage of her, and explains why she doesn't retaliate. So we encourage everyone to link in the chat room and video description to that article. Now, Daniel, you mentioned about some of the older generations and how drivers, when they come in, it just seems like they have an extra chip on their shoulder to really prove they belong there. And this is something that we see also in the workplace. A lot of females feel like that additional pressure where a male person could go in, take that high level position. Female workers, they seem to always have that extra pressure to prove they are belong in that position. And seems like, especially motorsports, that sometimes seems to be the same, especially when you have older fans. And one of the things that's really interesting that I find, you look at the National Hot Rod Association. They run side by side, but you're in your fixed lane. You don't pass each other by getting behind and drafting. You don't have where you got multiple corners lap after lap. It's just a straight shot. And there we've seen champions like Brittany Force. She's currently leading the points. Erica Anderson, Pro Stock, and even all the way back prior to the 90s, where we had Shirley McDowney, first female racer to get a championship in the National Hot Rod Association and a major motorsports series in the United States. So it's really interesting to see how that series, you have a lot more females compared to, unfortunately, this year, the Indianapolis 500. For the second time in 3 years, we don't have a female racer in there. And of course, you brought up NASCAR being so physical compared to sports car racing, compared to IndyCar, open wheels. Does NASCAR have a situation where the physical nature of the racing makes it hard to track this kind of problem, especially Hailie bringing up that she could be being raced against differently just because she is a female?
That's a really tough question. I'm honestly, I don't know if there is a specific problem in NASCAR, but also Danica Patrick, for example, where I remember she was saying something like this when she was competing in NASCAR a few years ago. So I think maybe yes, the physical nature of the race is where you are used to a lot more contact between the cars. Yes, maybe that is a factor, and you bring up a great point about the National Hot Rod Association. I think these races with being no contact have proven to be much more of an easier place for women racers. So I think definitely there is probably NASCAR, yes, but it's difficult for me to say what it has to be done to to try to solve this issue. I think it's also, as Hayley Deegan herself mentioned in that podcast, a generational thing. With the both the spectators and the competitors getting younger, I think that will probably be easier, a little bit better. But yeah, it's going to be, it's a fascinating topic, really.
It is, and you bring up, but NASCAR is so hard. I mean, even when it's one of the most infamous moments, Bristol Motor Speedway, I believe it was 1999 or 2000, Dale Earnhardt Sr. spins Terry Labonte on the last lap to get the win. He was booed out of that stadium. People were not happy how he got the win. And NASCAR, they couldn't draw a line of, was that intentional? Was that hard race? And was that Dale Earnhardt, who's nicknamed the Intimidator, being a bully out there? So it's really something where I remember when Danica Patrick was talking about sometimes she feels she's being raced a little bit more differently than others. People look at some of the moments like her and Landon Castle in Kansas Motor Speedway, where Castle made contact with her, she retaliated, but unfortunately she then got wrecked in that situation as well. Now, of course, National Hot Rod Association, you don't have the contact. Of course, it is drag racing. So, as I mentioned, Brittany Force, she is having a stellar season this year where she's leading the points over an 80-point lead. So, she's going to hold on to that lead for quite a while. And then, of course, Erica Anders, who is a multiple time champion in pro stock, including 3 in a row. Is one of the big things with the National Hot Rod Association is not on the same level when it comes to the NASCAR Cup Series or IndyCar, but they do have a long season, 22 races, and they're on television each and every week, and they have a large fan following as well. So the racers in the National Hot Rod Association, I mean, they got their own challenges. Of course, Brittany's Force going over 300 miles per hour. That's faster than any driver we talk about normally, even on grid live. So a lot going on. And of course, we are seeing, as you mentioned, newer, younger generation of fans. And we're seeing the series themselves, the FIA, they have the Women on Track initiative, NASCAR, the Drive for Diversity. And we've seen some success like Hailie Deegan. We've also seen Gracie Trotter as well, who got a couple wins. Not so much on the track this year, but we're seeing there's starting to become more and more female racers. Overall, with these movements to increase female racers on the track, like the FIA and NASCAR's effort, do you think that attitude will change even more so, especially besides just younger race fans coming in here thinking, hey, I want to see female racers, I want to see more diverse lineups? Do you think this will help with some of the other older fans that didn't see a whole lot of female racers to now see and, in a way, essentially see them as more equal and not having to prove more so than another driver they belong?
Well, hopefully, I think that's the long-term plan. I think it works definitely in trying to normalize, that in a way to the audience, because of course, seeing more talented female drivers on every championships all across the globe, it really, the spectators can really see that it's a mixed sport, while many of the spectators also, or people that usually do not follow motorsport with, on a consistent level, still today are kind of impressed that somehow this is a mixed sport. Well, it's just never been separated in this sport, but while still people nowadays can kind of get surprised that it's a mixed sport. So I think those programs definitely will work towards normalizing that. But also are working, are planning to bring more competitors, and so by enlarging, the base of the pyramid. When it's such a difficult, complex, and expensive sport, you are definitely, obviously, going to lose some drivers across the ladder. So of course, the really top level championships like the Cup in NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, and all these championships, it's much harder for everyone. On the percentage of how many drivers are starting out in karting or in the lower categories, it's obvious that we will lose some of the at the edge of this ladder. So enlarging this base of the pyramid, of course, works in trying to get more opportunities for drivers to go up to these elite series. And I think that in the moment where we'll start seeing female drivers winning races consistently and trying to get into maybe Formula 2 or Formula 1 or IndyCar or NASCAR at the top level, this is then something that the audience will definitely notice, that we have a mixed sport, and both the genders are competing equally and having the same opportunities to win and do well in some competitive equipment.
And you bring up a good point. I was shocked when I forgot somebody I remember was like, wait, women can race? And it's like, yeah, we're not just men only. We're not segregated like men's, women's basketball, or soccer, anyone could go out there and race. But I think it's just a lack of female racers we do see, especially in NASCAR, IndyCar, where people get that mindset thinking, "Oh, it's just men only." No, women could race here. It's the car doesn't know gender when who's behind it. Of course, it's more about the fans, the industry recognizing, okay, what can we do to be better for especially anyone to come in and race. Now, a couple comments in the chat room from Was Hayley Deegan, she rocks. So, a Hayley Deegan fan in the chat room. Always excited to see people in the chat room. Encourage everyone to share their comments as well. And of course, Hayley Deegan will be following her this entire season, as well as the National Hot Rod Association, Brittany Force, Erica Anders, and all the females racing there. Now, Daniel, I know this past weekend you were busy following 3 races, and we had 3 victorious racers.
Absolutely, we had, as we mentioned, it's important to keep reporting about the drivers that are doing well, and we had 3 female victories last weekend. Starting from GT World Challenge America, they were racing at the at NOLA Motorsports Park for the second round of the season, and usually we have 3 female drivers in this series. One is Ashton Harrison, who is making her first her debut in GT World Challenge on a full season seat, because of course last year she raced at the final round in Indianapolis and she won it outright. And then we have also Samantha Tan with Samantha Tan Racing, and Erin Vogel, who is at her second season in GT3 category, in GT3 platform. Samantha was not at the second round because she's having a little bit of a challenge with her team to get some spare parts, with of course the big logistics problem of the supply chain in the world going on. So she announced that she missed the round in GT World Challenge, also the Ferrari Challenge, and she's also racing Ferrari Challenge America. But she will go to the Spa 24 Hours in GT World Challenge Europe in a couple of weeks. So that is exciting for her. So we had Ashton Harrison and Erin Vogel at NOLA. And Ashton claimed their second win of her career in GT3 in the championship. She won race 2. It was kind of a very exciting race because it was mixed conditions. There was some rain at one point, and she's racing together with Mario Farnbacher, so a really competitive driver in GT3 with the Racers Edge Motorsports Acura. And Farnbacher was racing in the first stint. And then they were second, and then at the pit stop, one of the other teams had an issue at the pit stop, and Ashton went out and she found herself in the overall lead. Of course, she's racing in the Pro-Am category, so even though she was passed at one point by the K-Pax Lamborghini of Andrea Caldarelli, she still won the Pro-Am, and in these really tricky conditions with some mixed weather conditions, she was still the second fastest driver on track. So of all the pro entries and the Pro-Am entries, she was just behind the leading overall Lamborghini. So really exciting race for Ashton. She won the second race, and she was the second in Pro-Am in the first one. So really high level weekend for Harrison, who was also racing on the same weekend, also in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo in North American Championship, but she had 2 second places also there. So she brought home quite some silverware from that past weekend. Of course, also Erin Vogel, they are having a little bit more of a challenging season because they switched from the Mercedes AMG GT3 platform to the Acura also this year. She's racing with Real Time Racing together with Michael Cooper, and they were P5 in race 1. Very good race from them. They had a little bit of a challenging weekend, especially from practice, because they had some mechanical issues, and so they had to bounce back after a difficult qualifying. But still, they had 2 very strong races, strong pace from both Erin and Michael. Finished the P5 in the first one, and the P8 in class in the second one. So pretty solid weekend also for Erin Vogel. Next up, they'll go to Virginia International Raceway, which last year she won. She won in class, so she became the first woman to win in a SRO sanctioned series in GT3 machinery. So 1 year later, hopefully she can again do something similar. But Ashton Harrison's victory was not the only one last weekend, because we also had a massive weekend for Jessica Bachmann in the ADAC TCR Germany Championship. She, of course, last year she was doing the World Cup. This year she's back in the German Championship, and they were racing at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, and she won both of the races that weekend. Race 1 and race 2. She had a little bit of a tricky race 1 because she had a great start, a little bit too much, and she had a jump start. So she received a 5-second penalty, but she still could open a safe enough gap into race 1 to win the race. And starting from the second row in race 2, she managed to gain 3 positions and win again in race 2. So really massive pace for Jessica Bachmann. And now she's second in the standings, in the points standings. So we will definitely keep following Jessica Bachmann in TCR Germany this year. And also GT Open. We spoke last week on this episode about her new team. She was launching her own racing team, Seba Motorsport, the first Saudi team that is aiming for Le Mans glory one day. And she is now competing in her first season in GT3 racing, in GT Open. First round in S3, they won both race 1 and race 2 in the Pro-Am category. And now they were racing in Le Castellet. Unfortunately, they had a 20-second success penalty, which is like in GT Open, it works like a success ballast, but they have like a 20-second time penalty at the pit, at the driver change for the team that wins the previous round. So of course they had a little bit more of a challenging weekend because of that 20-second success penalty. And they were P8 in the first race, and while in the second one they had a really strong race, and they were able again to win in Pro-Am, and they were also in the overall podium. So a really solid weekend for Rima Jafali in her first official weekend as also a team owner, as a driver owner. So I would say really overall a very successful weekend for female racing drivers.
Very successful weekend for female racing drivers all around. And we do have a comment in the chat room. It is from Wasp about Hailie Deegan. Jackman front tire guy are terrible. She loses positions on every pit stop. This just seems to be something we even see in the Cup Series. Bubba Wallace, Kurt Busch, their pit crew always seems to just lose position after position. It just makes it really hard for the driver. And Hailie Deegan, I know DGR Racing, they're looking at how to improve that for the next upcoming race weekend. And of course, this upcoming race weekend, we do have the ARCA Menards Series, the General Tire 150 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So this is essentially a home race for a lot of teams being based out of the Concord, North Carolina area. And of course, we're going to have 2 racers there that are racing. Amber Balkan, she's going to be there. She's coming off a top 10 finish this last race weekend. And Tony Brenniger. Tony had a great run overall last week, just missing out the top 10. And one of the big things, of course, with Tony, if she could get a top 10 finish, that could really just start sending her season towards the right direction. She's had fast rides this year with Venturini Racing. Was the top of the first practice session in Daytona. Lacked the super speedway experience. And then, of course, just super speedway racing, just like a Talladega, running towards the front, but then getting caught up in a crash. And in fact, it was at Talladega she brought up how the driver behind her caused a crash that really could have easily been preventable. So Tony definitely looking for a better race weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway, where it comes down to having a good handling car. And of course, Amber Balkan, who just comes off the top 10 finish the last race weekend at Kansas. She is looking to continue that streak, get another top 10 finish. Be really excited for her if she could do that. And of course, that's going to be this race weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which along with the ARCA series. We got, of course, the NASCAR Cup Series and their longest race of the year, the Coca-Cola 600. Daniel, when it comes to this upcoming race weekend, which races are you going to be looking at?
Well, there are probably some of the most important races on the calendar year this weekend. So and they seem to be all together. So whoever did the calendars for a racing series next year, maybe they will try to put some space in between. Especially, of course, we know that Monaco and Indianapolis 500 are always often on the same weekend. But this year also we have the 24-hour of the Nürburgring, which is obviously one of the biggest GT race series in the world. We have quite some big names in female also in that race. We have the girls only team that they won last year in the SP8 class. They also are back to defend that title in that class in GT4. We have Pieperman racing there, also Kerry Schreiner, Fabienne Volvend, and Celia Martin. So big team in that class. We also have Jasmine Preissig racing in the TCR category, and also Laura Kreihammer racing in the GTX category. But then we also have the Monaco Grand Prix. Monaco Grand Prix with the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine as a support series. And we have two female drivers there, Amda Alkbeizi and Lena Buller. This morning they had qualifying, and of course we often speak about this championship on here, and we often say how big of a grid they have, almost 40 cars grid. And Monaco, compared to some other tracks, it's homologated for not that many cars, so there cannot be that many cars. I think 30 cars is the limit. So of course some drivers will do not take part in the races. They had practice yesterday, and the last four from the championship didn't have the chance to do then the second practice session. Then qualifying, so some also four drivers that do not qualify for the race. It's a little bit more difficult for them, because of course it's the big event of that championship, and unfortunately some of the drivers are not making the grid. But luckily, both Lena and Hamda did make the grid into race one. Hamda Alkubezi will start from P25 tomorrow morning, and just behind her she will have Lena Buller starting from P26. So pretty good qualifying for them, even though there were some red flags this morning. Of course, it being Monaco, it's always tricky with drivers with not that much of an experience. For Lena, it will be her second time in Monaco. Last year, she had her interestingly best race of the season with the top 20. And well, for Hamda, on the other hand, it will be her first time on a street circuit and at Monaco. She sent us a couple of messages yesterday, and she was super happy about being there and just having the experience of racing around those corners, those in that historic track. So she was really excited and really hyped to be there. So we're definitely going to look to their race really closely and hopefully report from a good result next week.
And of course, you can always visit the website racersbehindthehelmet.com. Here is the calendar as some of the upcoming races. And of course, there's the ARC Menards, NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, Hailie Deegan and there, all sorts of racing going on. And of course, along the homepage, you can find all the news articles of all the stories, including Ashton Harrison taking the win, and a great piece about Irania Serdikova. Encourage everyone to check that out. Of course, she was scheduled to be in the W Series this year, but due to everything going on between Russia, Ukraine, the drivers from Russia being banned, changed some plans. Definitely a really telling story about how everything has impacted her. And we encourage everyone to visit the website as well, where you can see all the stories each and every week, all year long. And of course, be sure to subscribe to us right here at the Grid Network so you don't miss any of our program, including this weekend. As Daniel mentioned, it is a big weekend in motorsports, and we're going to have two Grid Live previews on Saturday, starting with the Indianapolis 500 pre-race show. That's going to be early Saturday morning for everyone on the East Coast. We're very excited to preview the great race, and if Helio Castroneves could become the first driver in the over 100-year history of the Indianapolis 500 to win 5 Indy 500s. That would be a feat a lot of people never thought we'd get there. Some people thought we will not have a 5-time winner, the Indy 500. We just had the 3-4-time winners. He became a 4-time winner last year. Now he's going for a 5th one. One more comment in the chat from Watts. I have nothing but respect for all the women drivers. Watts, thank you for all your comments throughout the show today. We definitely encourage you to subscribe to the Grid Network. We're on the air. Usually we're here Thursday. Sometimes we just get things where we're trying to do different things. We're on the air Friday. Sometimes we're at the track with Daniel. And of course, every Wednesday, Kobe and Adam with Grid Tonight, all the news. And then on the weekend, Grid Live pre-race, including the Indy 500, as well as the Coca-Cola 600, NASCAR Truck Series, NASCAR Truck Series, NASCAR Cup Series, Formula One, IndyCar, and MotoGP this weekend. And thank you, Watts. We super appreciate you tuning in and subscribing. Daniel, thank you so much for being on the show. As always, we encourage everyone to be sure to subscribe, just like Watts did. Be sure to, if you're interested in keeping us on the air, our Patreon page, buy me a coffee. You could buy myself, Daniel, or any of the on-air talent a cup of coffee. We'll greatly appreciate that. And of course, one of the big things, our sponsor, public.com, where you could get $5 in free stock by using a referral code GridNet. For Daniel Zeri at Racers, the Girls Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Sandiego. Thank you for watching today's show. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.